All right, we're up and live. Okay, hello everybody. Everybody from the future, just know that this is a live stream. So I'm going to start reading the channeling and discussing it in about 1 or 2 minutes from now. I'm just going to wait for a few people to come in. So if you're watching this video in the future, just go ahead and skip forward 1 or 2 minutes, and then I'll be diving in. I want to basically discuss this subject of the symbolism of Jesus and the Buddha. And I want to make sure that my chat is live. Live chat. Cool, cool. All right, so a few people are coming in. I'm going to wait just another minute or two, and then we're going to dive into this channeling. Basically, last night I got inspired, and I received a message that I'm going to read for you that is about the symbolism of Jesus and the Buddha and how they are connected with each other. And then we're going to dive into talking about it. So also, before I read this, if you have any comments or questions, put them in the comment section even while I'm reading, because as I say in all of my live streams, I want this to be a conversation between both of us. So whatever these words inspire for you, be sure to put them in there. And let's see. Hey, Cassia. Mwah. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading from the channeling, and then we can discuss it. So here we go. This is called Jesus and the Buddha. It is the synthesis of these two symbols that will lead people to a greater understanding of truth, forgiveness, and compassion. It will trigger an awakening in their being that will resonate like a bell. Jesus is an amazing symbol of compassionate love and fierce truth. It is truly how Chogyam Trungpa describes the tongue being like a sword, and sometimes it is necessary to slice through lies. Jesus exemplifies the power and the compassion of the wielder of truth. The Buddha represents the symbol of how you will awaken, if you choose, to a higher nature within yourself, which is revealed to be the Buddha nature or Christ consciousness. It is you who must become like the Christ. It is you who must become like the Buddha. Your soul must awaken so that you become the conduit through which these higher vibrational energies, which you call forgiveness, compassion, empathy, these higher vibrational traits come in through you, human being, old soul. Part of this truth is recognizing that there are large portions of our shared reality that have become comfortable with lies. And they have learned to justify lies. And they don't want to be called out for their lies. They like to say more things to protect their lies. But the truth is an eternal flame. The truth will always burn down. The truth will always burn a lie to the ground. And that is what leads the liar into fear and then into survival. The wonderful news about truth, the good news about truth, is that you are not your lie. You are a piece of truth, and your lie can and will be burned away from you, yet you will remain. The degree to which that letting go, or that burning of the part of you that is not in alignment with your higher self, the amount of pain you experience in that psychological death is entirely relative upon the fact of how much you resist the process. If you resist the death of your lie, then it will be more painful psychologically when the truth comes to burn your lie to the ground. But you see, there is choice. You can always choose. And how you choose here, could go in the form of you choose to sacrifice your lie as an offering to the flame of truth. There is a letting go that changes the energy state of your being, and therefore changes the amount of psychological pain you feel in letting go of your lie. But as Jesus described, the truth will set you free. And your being is already a part of that thing we call truth, this thing we call manifested reality. All of nature is truth, and nature is another way that Jesus talks about God. Nature is God. God created this world. And for so God loved this world that he chose that we might know his love. And he gave us choice. That truth and love and God and nature and reality and the root of your being are all interconnected. They are all intertwined in the circle of one. This is your true nature. This is who you are at a core level. But there is something within the human being that we call the ego. In yoga philosophy, it is termed avidya, which means ignorance, a misunderstanding, a willingness to not understand the reality of your life. And that is the root cause of suffering, avidya. To my English ears, the term avidya sounds like avoiding, which might be a very accurate word in English to understand the concept of avidya and how it is connected to the root of suffering. When we avoid the things in our lives that we know, on some level we are consciously aware that we have things in our lives that do not benefit us, that we keep in because of habit. If we avoid those changes necessary to end that habit, then we will experience the outcome that is at the end of that path. This is obviously done with free choice. So avoiding that which you know on some conscious level is not in alignment with your highest expression, then that is the root cause of suffering that will come with the daily choice of avoiding it. Do you see how they are interconnected? And yet we can see the root of this suffering that we experience, that we manifest through our own creative power, is our choice. It is our choice if we choose to avoid that which we know we should pay attention to. In the Christian world, this has been termed sin, and there are all kinds of misconstrued connotations that are applied to this word sin. So let's change this word to its English definition. This is an archer's term, which means to miss the mark. This is the same terminology we were just discussing with the Buddha and how avidya, avoidance, leads to suffering. Avoidance is missing the mark of becoming your highest self. We want to become our highest self, and yet if we avoid how we know we could progress along that path, then that is the equivalent of missing the mark of who you really are. Jesus and the Buddha are a perfect harmony with a lesson for the old soul that will awaken it to its true nature. For the younger souls that come in contact with this message, it will be something to aspire to, and they will make a judgment when they hear it of if they are ready for it or not. But you, old soul, know that you are. You know that you are ready to be your highest expression. So now that you have this wisdom, you know that the choice is yours to live in alignment with your highest expression or to avoid the habits that are keeping you from your highest expression. This is your choice. If this choice remains in your mind space, then you are in a stance of avidya. But if you put this wisdom into action, your old soul will come forward. It is best to remember that life is an eternal journey. There is no destination to which we must arrive or else. We are on an eternal path. So the key word is trajectory. Which path do you choose to follow? Follow the path to your soul and you will be freed. That is the promise from the ancient ones. Follow the path to your soul and you will be freed. The only way out is in. So there you have it. First, before I say anything, I'm going to read some of these comments and see what people are saying. I see Ralph here, been saying you've been waiting for another video. Awesome. Or that was Rachel, I'm sorry. Nice to see you, Rachel. Hey, Lizard. Shelby says, so very true. Choose truth and choose yourself in the healthiest ways possible. Brian says, yes, nothing to fear but fear itself, addiction. Do you see that? Brian says, craving, love, hate, food, water, and the wheel. Yeah. So basically what I'm seeing with the message inside this channeling is that we have these habits that we can, on some conscious level, recognize are working against us when we are going towards our highest expression. And the way I kind of see it is like when we're a newly born child, we come into this world as a blank slate, and yet we also come in with our entire Akashic record. This is everything that our soul has ever been through. And so it is my belief that when you enter this planet, you enter as a pure being. A being that is not conditioned, is not filtered. And what is there when a being is non-conditioned? All that is there is unconditional love. And then we go through the growing up process, and we learned that parts of ourselves don't vibe with the people around us. Our parents tell us who we should be, our school system tells us who we should be, our friendships and our relationships all start to dictate who we should be. And so we forget who we are. And so then along the path of becoming older, we take on habits, and we take on these changes to our consciousness. And yet there is a part of our awareness, the original seed of our being, that is always watching, always aware. And it knows and feels when something is out of alignment. And so it could literally be anything, any form of addiction or bad behavior. But see, the word addiction implies this larger than life bad habit, when in fact it could be something as simple as not speaking your truth fully. Maybe that's a habit that you've gotten used to. Or maybe it could be as innocuous as just not being totally honest in your relationships. All of these things, whether they're massive addictions or little tiny, missing the marks, they are all, or rather, when we avoid them, it is the very avoidance of them that is the root cause of what we will experience in the future that we call suffering. So suffering is something that is inevitable, but is also avoidable. It's funny to use that word avoiding in two different directions. We can either avoid our bad habits and then therefore create the path that will lead us towards our own suffering. Or we can choose to go into our bad habits, to deprogram them, and then therefore we avoid the suffering that we would have experienced if we would have kept those bad habits in play. And so there is a large portion of this conversation that comes down to choice, and how it is our choice of what we will manifest in our reality that will either lead to bliss and love, or it will lead to fear and survivalism and hatred. Because you see, when we get into this place of suffering, it is much easier to blame someone else, external, for our suffering than it is to say the simple sentence that I could have avoided that. It was something that I actually manifested in my reality. Cassia says, so recognizing we have a choice in each moment. Exactly. And if you follow me on Instagram, I've started with some friends recently a hashtag of you can choose. And this whole idea does come down to choice. You see, we live in this free will universe where our choices are how we actually manifest our reality. And so it really does come down to choice. Do you see yourself as a victim of the suffering in your life? Or do you see yourself as a co-creator of your entire life, which means you must take on this radical ownership of that everything wrong in your life, you have somehow either created or magnetically attracted in to your reality. But see, we don't like doing that because it challenges our ego. And our ego is always defensive. It does not want to think that it can create our own suffering. But it most certainly does. And so when you take on this radical stance of accepting the fact that you are a co-creator in your reality, that is the only way to officially transcend or transmute the suffering which you are currently experiencing. You see, if you stay in the victim stance of the world is oppressing me, or the world has it out for me, then you do not understand your power that you have to actually co-create. You have now put yourself in a position of victim and powerlessness to say that the external has more power over me. But the truth is, if you really dive into your thoughts, then you will see that there are parts of your own being that you have not addressed, which have led you down this default path, which leads to suffering. So we must become consciously aware of all of the little ways that we lead ourselves down the path of suffering, so that through that awareness, we can now avoid, in the healthy sense, the result of these bad habits that we are otherwise not paying attention to. I saw a few comments come in. Let's see what you guys are saying. Brian says, all consciousness, all go back to light. Yes. Brian says, you are one. You are the rose perfect. We are the people. We are the cross. I drink the magic water from the cup. Explain more, Brian. I'm interested into what you're actually getting at. But yes, we are the vessels through which Christ consciousness or Buddha nature, which are the same thing, will come about into this world. You see, Christianity has kind of put this idea of Christ returning to the planet into, again, an externalized power type of view. Whereas the way that I see it, when I integrate the symbols of the Buddha and Christ consciousness, it is through our own being that Christ will return to the world. And how will you know when Christ has returned to the world? Well, you will only know it from the middle of your chest. You will only know it from your being, from the inside out, because now you are different in the world. And then when there are a multitude of beings that have reached this level of consciousness, then we will experience Christ consciousness being on the earth, being in the greater form of conscious beings. But it is important for the old soul, for you, to understand that Christ consciousness or Buddha nature comes in through you. It is not something that comes to you, as in like another being out there, somewhere in the cosmos, coming back to the planet. It is something that comes through you. And so it is important to understand these symbols so that we can awaken ourselves to our own higher nature. You see, Jesus says over and over in the Bible that you will do the things you have seen me do and more. You will be greater. You will do greater things than even I have done, that even I have displayed. And I believe that to be super true, because Jesus it seems to me that his whole message could be summarized to, you are divinity in a body, and it is the fact that you have forgotten your true nature of divinity in a body that chaos is the ruler of your life. And so when you remember that your soul is a piece of that which we call God, there is a harmonizing again with Source. And then divinity begins to flow through you. So we must now take this awareness and apply it into the world that we see. When I look out on the world today and I see the current landscape of what's going on, we see a lot of people that have forgotten how to be in a position of compassion, true understanding, true tolerance, and empathy. And everybody has kind of taken on this narcissistic, it's all about me mentality. I need you to behave a certain way because of how it affects me. I need you to do X, Y, and Z because of me. And yet, that individual, speaking from that perspective, has forgotten their own co-creative aspect of the universe and of the reality that they are in. They have forgotten simply that they are connected to the divine, that they are divine in their being. And so neurosis begins to rule the mind of someone who has forgotten their soul connection to source. So it is important for the old soul to show compassion to these people, because it is through compassion that we can help transmit this energy of what it feels like to remember your true soul nature as a divine being. And it's important for us to remember when we get frustrated with people that seem to be behaving in these horrible ways. We see their mind programming. We see how they don't have original thoughts, that they just regurgitate thoughts from other places and other sources. It's important to get, or we do get upset by people doing that. And I think it's because if your soul is rooted so much in living in alignment with truth, then you see how this person is not actually living in alignment with truth. And so when we get upset with that person, how can we trigger our compassion in that moment? And the way I believe we can trigger our compassion in that moment is to realize that they are coming from a place of fear, which is a place of feeling disconnected, isolated, and alone from the greater universe, which we call divinity or God. They do not feel their connection to source. And this is a problem of the ego blocking them from their highest connection with source. And so I view these people that are in this extreme stance of fear as if they were a crying child. In my mind's eye, I see them about 5 years old, 5 or 6 years old, trying to express their pain, but not having a full vocabulary available to them. They basically just throw tantrums and they display how afraid that they are. And so what does a loving adult do in that moment? Do they chastise that child for their fear? Of course not. They lovingly listen. And then when the time is right, they hold them in their arms. And they just try to show them through their actions love. And they show them a firmness of compassion. And that is how I believe we should energetically hold those that are most clearly coming from a position of fear. I've been talking a lot. Let me read some of the comments that have been coming in. Brian says, you are the blood, the DNA, the body is the temple. Jesus Christ is in you. 100%. You are the temple. This is what all the biblical symbolism and metaphors about temples is getting at, is that you are the temple for the divine to come through on this planet, to live in your temple and then to live in this planet. But if your temple is out of alignment, if you are avoiding the ways that your temple is out of order, then you're like kinking the hose, you're blocking the flow. The prana tube of your chakra system is not able to flow perfectly, and therefore divine intuition is blocked, remembrance of your past lives and of your own innate wisdom is blocked because your temple is out of order. Let me keep going back to these comments. Cassia says, so hard to show compassion to those who are asleep. Yes, it is. But then Lizard says, compassion is the ultimate gift. And yes, it is. It is difficult because everything inside of me, at least, wants to just slap that person and be like, dude, get yourself together, put your temple in order. That's the reason why you're even feeling this way, is that your temple is out of order. But that doesn't help. It doesn't help that person. It doesn't display to them an energy that they could get behind. And so that's why the analogy of the child and hugging them and showing them unconditional love. That is the most effective approach, I believe, because it kind of goes beyond words and it gets to the root energy of the problem. If a child is having that tantrum and an adult lovingly listens to them and then holds them in their arms, that uses no words, and it shows that child with their actions that they are in a safe space. And then the energy of finally feeling that connection to source is now able to transmute the energy of that child who was in a state of fear, raising them up to another level to experience love in their now moment. And so this is all metaphor to say this is exactly what we should be doing when we interact with people that are clearly behaving from a fearful inner child kind of state. So more comments. Let's see. Cassia says it's important to lead with the heart and by example. Yes. Hi, Christy. Good to see you. Rachel says, how to not let negativity from others affect you, especially with family of origin. I feel better when I have some distance from them. Quote, you become who you hang around. Can you share your opinion? Sure. I definitely think that there's a lot to be said for that. The truth is, if you're an old soul, Rachel, then you will not become the people that you hang out with, because there is infinite lifetimes behind you that your soul is connected to. And so it's like a much thicker shell. I don't know if that's the right analogy, but you have a harder time officially becoming those people. However, the distinction I'd like to make is that you might feel that you are becoming like them because you feel their feelings, you feel their energy. And when you feel their energy, the old soul gets afraid. Oh my God, I might become like that person. I might start behaving like that person. Now, the truth is, of course, that's possible. But your position as an old soul is one that has more tenacity, more ability to stand on its own than any other younger soul that you might be around. But with all of that said, I do think that it's very important to monitor who you spend your time with, especially if you see it affecting your inner state, because that is the most important thing. If your inner state fluctuates and becomes internally destructive, then you are not as effective energetically when attempting to help transmute the energies of the people you see around you. So I hope that answers your question. If that leads you to another question, please drop it in the comment section in the chat. Dynamite says, I'm broken. A great example by Pantera that I'm broken. I wish I knew how to become enlightened. Not exactly sure what song you're talking about. I don't know what to do. How do you fix your temple, though? Methodically. Okay, so Dynamite is asking, how do you fix your temple? Well, let's go back to the channeling. I hope you heard the channeling that I read at the beginning. But when you are in alignment with truth, which is a stance that accepts reality as it is, before your ego has even a moment to dictate whether it likes reality or hates reality, wants it to be exactly as it is or wants it to be different according to some image in the mind of your ego. This is the moment where we then choose if we're going to live in alignment with truth or not. You see, living in alignment with truth is very simply getting out of your opinion of what you think reality should be. See, this is counterintuitive to an ego. The ego says, well, if I don't change reality, then it could become something that I don't want it to be. But that's not true, because reality itself is divine. It is the dysfunction of the human ego that thinks it can manipulate divinity to go towards its own benefit. So then it is our manipulation of truth that then leads us towards suffering. So, for instance, let's use a simple example. This is not meant to be offensive. This is meant to be an accurate depiction of how truth works and how we can deny it. So we know that if we if we have a habit of eating healthy food, the chances of us having a healthy body and a healthy energy system are extremely high. Whereas if we eat a diet that is full of junk food, fast food, and all the rest, then we know that the chances of us becoming overweight and having physical problems is high. So there is a truth there. So now when you go about living your life and you choose to eat an unhealthy lifestyle, now comes the moment, are you going to live in alignment with truth where you know you're not supposed to do that thing? If your end goal is to be healthy, then you know that you probably shouldn't do that thing. If you choose to avoid that level of your consciousness, that level of your being that says, I'm just denying the fact that junk food is going to make my body weaker. If you deny that, if you avoid that, then when you experience the suffering of those choices, it is simply because of your avoidance of that conscious part of you that could predict that outcome. And so back to your specific question of how do you restructure and clean out your temple? It is as simple as observing yourself on a moment-by-moment basis. This is why becoming aware and becoming observant of yourself throughout every moment of your day, that is the answer. And see, your mind might think, well, there's all this stuff I have to do about all the stuff I didn't observe in the past, and now I've built this crazy temple for myself, and I got to change it all one piece at a time. It's not true. All you got to do is in your now moment, become aware of your choices, and then choose the path that your higher self, your soul, the divinity within you, spirit within you, knows is the path that will be better for you in the long run. So to summarize, how do you get your temple clear? It's as simple as living in alignment with truth on a daily basis. Every single now moment of your reality should be lived with as much self-observation and awareness as possible. And then by living in that state, your temple will naturally become ordered once again. So let me know if that inspires another question out of you. I'm going to go back to the chat. Cassia responded by saying perhaps some shadow work. Yes, shadow work is an amazing tool that we have at our disposal to clear out those blockages from the past that are generally those pieces or portions of us that we have suppressed for so long that they become kind of like an out of control shadow, as Carl Jung describes. So clearing out those shadows is another way that we can restructure and bring our temples back into a position of order. Okay, Cassia says shadow work is recognizing the traits and behaviors that you have rejected within yourself and loving and welcoming them. Yes. And Chrissy says, love the temple metaphor, so helpful. Yeah. So loving the pieces of yourself that you have suppressed for so long is one of the ways that you can integrate that part of your shadow self. And the integration process is an elevation process. And who you will be after you integrate is a much more coherent and whole being. I'm totally willing to talk more on that. I'm just trying to keep up with these comments. Rachel says, very insightful answer. Thank you. You're more than welcome, Rachel. Dynamite says, so thought pattern, awareness, and ego death. I understand, I hope. I'm pretty sure. Awareness, ego death. Yeah, basically, it's as simple, because even those terms can be kind of confusing, because what do they really mean? Well, the ego death that I was reading about in the channeling at the beginning is that when we do not live in alignment with truth, by definition, we are living in alignment with lies. I see someone named N says hi. Hi, N. But so when we are not living in alignment with truth, by definition, we are living in alignment with lies. And that creates this need in us to protect those lies. And so we become defensive of those. We become fearful that our lies will be figured out. And so we expend exponential amounts of energy trying to maintain these lies, to try to force these lies to be true. But there is always a piece of your being that will know that there is a day that will come when your lie will be found out. And so that puts you in a position of being totally afraid of reality, because now you have to protect yourself at every turn. And so the remedy for that is to let go of the lie and come back to truth. But sometimes that can be very traumatic, because you've built your life in some regards to be in alignment with this lie. So when the lie falls apart, there are pieces of your life that will fall apart. If you can see the higher perspective of this conversation, then you can see how that ego death, the death of that lie, and the death of those parts of your life that are trying to live in alignment with that lie is actually a good thing. It is actually a positive step in the direction of your soul path, even if that means that you have to give up something that your ego was holding on to tightly. The ultimate truth of letting go of that lie is that you are now swinging back in the direction of being in alignment with truth. And then when you are in that position of truth, Jesus says the truth will set you free. It is not something that gradually happens. It's actually something that happens instantly. And my idea, my analogy for that is I feel like I've heard stories of inmates, people that have gone to jail, that actually feel quite good despite the fact that they are living this rather shitty situation. And I think that that could be possible because there's a emotional and spiritual weight that has been lifted off their shoulders when they just fessed up to what they actually did, instead of trying to continuously live this lie. You see, in America, we love bank heist movies. And we think that bank heist movies are so much fun because we get to watch them do all of this fucked up shit and eventually get their money, and then they go on to live their amazing life with their millions of dollars they've just stolen, and then roll credits, right? That's where the movie ends, happily ever after. But it is most certainly not happily ever after in the real world, because if you've taken all of those actions that are basically lie after lie after lie to then get this money, what have you actually set yourself up for? You've set yourself up for a lifetime of trying to protect the truth from ever coming out. Because now the truth, if it was to come out, would get you thrown in jail and would get all of this money that you worked so hard for removed from your reality. But if you did actually come clean with the truth of the fact that you committed this crime and all of that, then immediately the lie is now lifted off of your shoulders and you have nothing more to protect. And so that is how I believe that even if you experience the negative ramifications of that lie coming to light, you will still feel better, and it will happen instantaneously because now you no longer have to protect this neurotic lie with your life. So yeah, I saw a few more comments come in. Dynamite says, I'm 19, so in practice, is there a reason why my age would be a problem? Of course not. Your age has nothing to do with your soul development. Of course, there's part of your human mind that develops throughout lifetimes. I know as a 34-year-old man, I'm very different than I was when I was 24 or 14 or 4. So yes, of course, your human mind will evolve, but your soul has been here for lifetimes and lifetimes. And there's nothing you could do wrong in that regard. Let me see. Kristen says, change equals destruction or rebirth, and I choose rebirth. Totally. Yes. Kristen, for those of you that are unaware, she and I are starting a podcast together with another person. And we just recorded our first podcast, and we talked all about that death and rebirth process, and that death is never a finite state. There's never going to be any form of death that enters your life that will end everything, in existence. Death is always followed immediately by the rebirth. This is why in a lot of yoga classes, at the very end of yoga, you do what's called Shavasana, where you lay on your back. And this pose is actually translated in English to mean corpse pose. It is the death of your practice, and metaphorically speaking, it is a death. But then in most yoga classes that I've been to, when the teacher calls you out of Shavasana pose, laying on your back, you roll onto your right side and you lay in a fetal position before you officially come up, and then the class is over. So right there in that moment, you see how those two symbols are deeply connected and always followed by one another. You have a death that is immediately followed by a new birth. And so this is what we are attempting to do when we want to clear out our temple. We must go through the ego death first, which we have been so fearful for, and then we will experience the rebirth. This is also how Joseph Campbell kind of talks about the hero's journey, that the hero gets the call to action, then experiences all of these trials, giving them new skills, and eventually the hero must confront the dragon. And then if the hero is successful in slaying the dragon, then it also immediately back into the original world that it came from, that the hero came from. So this is describing in mythology over and over and over again that this dragon within us that we do not want to confront, this dragon is the symbol of all of the ways that we live out of alignment with our higher self and with our true nature. And this dragon is fierce, and it does want to destroy us. But if we destroy the dragon, then we immediately receive the treasure that the dragon was protecting. See, the treasure is that truth, is the temple that is now back in order, is your life that will take on harmony again and coherence. The dragon, it is what is hiding that treasure from the hero. And so it is up to the hero to go into the underworld, into the dimension of hell, which is the dimension of the suffering that we are avoiding. Address the suffering, slay the dragon, and then the treasure is received, and the treasure brings with it new life. So that's why the moment at the bottom of the cycle of the hero's journey, the moment where you slay the dragon is always at the bottom. It's always symbolized in the underworld or the hell-like dimensions, because it is precisely the place that the hero does not want to go. But if the hero does choose, or even sometimes doesn't choose but is forced into that place of dealing with that dragon, then if the hero rises to the challenge, ends the dragon, then the hero is immediately given the treasure. And then the hero takes the treasure back to the world and is able to benefit the world. You see, that's why I love Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. It's always applicable, every conversation. It's so good. All right, there's a few more comments. Let's see what's up. Cassia says, Damien, you're on the right path. You are so lucky to be waking up so early. Yep. Damien says, I don't know who I was before I have a lot of pain in my mind. Let's see. Yeah, cool. I think you guys are tracking with what I'm saying. If you have any more questions, put them in the chat now, because I kind of feel like I'm reaching a natural end of this conversation, but I want to make sure that I'm not leaving any of your questions out of the dialogue. So anything else that comes onto your mind, just pop it in there now and I'll chat about it. But yeah, the general idea I wanted to portray in this video was that the symbols of Jesus, the death and rebirth on the cross, is the same symbols in Eastern philosophy of the Buddha having the ego death and then the rebirth into Buddha nature. It is the same. And the root of that process is what in Eastern philosophy is called avidya, the avoiding of letting go of the parts of us that we can see on some conscious level that we have these pieces of us that are out of alignment with our highest self. So it is important to identify those pieces of you that are out of alignment with your highest imagined self, your real old soul nature. Identify those pieces of you, those dragons that you have within you. Slay those dragons and receive the gold, and the gold being living back in alignment with truth and a greater coherence that will come over your energy system and your mind and body connection, your connection with spirit. And when you are in that place, then you, the hero of your story, can re-enter your world and benefit all of the beings that you come into contact with, because now your temple has order. And so the divine lives coherently within you. And then your heart radiates out this coherence. And then you can actually help change people. When you experience people that are living from their inner child state of fear, you have the depth and the emotional capacity to hold them with loving compassion. And then when you cradle them with your love, which comes from beyond your human ego, it is divine love coming through you that is now holding them in compassion. That energy will transmute their uncoherence into coherence. You see, love, the vibration of love is so powerful that you don't actually need words. You just need to embody it. And when you embody that love energy, then you will most certainly be able to transmit that coherence to everybody that you interact with along your path. So I didn't see any other major questions come in, so I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for coming through the live stream today. And if you want to know when I go live in the very near future, just be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. That way, when I go live, you'll get a notification through YouTube. And if you're watching this video in the future and you have questions, just put them in the comments down below, and I will do my best to answer them. And maybe that'll even inspire another video for the future. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening today. I hope you have a beautiful day out there. Enjoy your journey, and thanks again for listening. Until I see you again along your journey, oneness in sound. Wait for it. Hey, oneness in sound. I am OnenO. Peace out, guys.